It's pretty well known that most people today live with some form of debt, and this can impact their daily lives in many different ways. With this in mind, if you are someone who wants to improve your financial position, getting out of debt and not living paycheck to paycheck is the biggest step that you can take. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reece, and in today's video, I'm going to be having a friendly conversation about the difference between a want and a need, and the importance of being able to identify the difference between a want and a need. Although the answer to this question might seem blatantly obvious, our minds are excellent at coming up with justifications to move something from that want category over to the need category, resulting in us buying something that we potentially didn't need to spend our money on. If you really take a step back and think about it for a moment, there really is not that much you need, keyword need, to survive. Generally speaking, a roof over your head, access to food and water, and then general everyday essentials like toiletries, some basic clothing, and I would go as far to say that a phone in today's day and age as well is all it really takes to get by. People categorize needs as many different things, but for the sake of keeping it simple in today's video, I'm going to classify a need as something that you must have to survive, and that means that everything else is a want. Now, this can be a relatively tough conversation to have with yourself and others as well, because at the end of the day, people just want to live their best lives. And living their best lives generally includes them having the things that they think they need, but they technically really want. They don't necessarily need them, but they want them. They may be the things that give them the dopamine boost, a bit of joy, a bit of excitement, and a bit of happiness for a short period of time. Generally speaking, I'm talking about materialistic items and everyday objects. Leading on from this, I would also say that people claim that they need things like a gym membership to be able to exercise, stay fit and healthy. And while I absolutely agree having something like a gym membership is incredibly convenient for my exercise routine, technically, you do not need it. You can find ways to exercise without it. It might be a bit of an inconvenience, but when you talk in terms of a need versus a want, that is something that I would claim as being a luxurious item to have. It's having the ability to utilize a service that makes your life more convenient. So with that in mind, the task that now follows is finding ways to cut spending to basically reduce your debt, pay off your debt, whatever it may be, to just be better with money management. This is where we now stem into the understanding of being able to apply the common sensey breakdown of a want versus a need and turning that into actual good life choices with money management that will only benefit you, especially if you are someone who is living paycheck to paycheck. Now, realistically, if you're watching this video, it's safe to assume that a lot of you would have purchased something that is a want and potentially justified it as a need in the past. I'm not a psychic, I swear, but generally if you have access to the internet, a phone, a computer, and the speakers and the desk and everything that comes along with it, generally speaking, for the majority of people, that's the want component and that's where you've put your money. No shade, no judgment, just saying to watch YouTube, you need those things. Where I'm going with this in particular is now that you have these things, the first step to taking towards actually putting yourself in this better financial position and mindset surrounding a want versus a need and how you go about saving up for something that's a want and not spending thinking or justifying that it's a need is being happy with what you have in the moment. This is very important. This is something that absolutely, once you get to a certain point in your life, becomes almost like a superpower, right? There are two specific reasons as to why. The first is that being happy with what you have in that moment, it shows you that money does not determine or drive how much fun you can have in general. If you are happy with what you have, realistically, that means that anything that gets added additionally to your life, whether it be materialistic, whether it be a good or service that makes your life more convenient, what you have right now is enough and you're happy with it. Therefore, the things that get added only add to that good enough in that moment. The second thing out of this as well, with being happy with what you have, that is absolutely one of the best things you can do with money management, is you learn and you understand the sacrifice that goes into achieving something, which makes it that much more rewarding. When I say achieve something, I'm talking about buying something and actually taking the time to save up for that item. Saving to make a purchase in particular is incredibly rewarding. And once you build a routine, it just becomes second nature and part of your day-to-day life. I can't encourage this one enough. It's something I've done my whole life. And now I'm at a point where I can buy what I need. I can buy what I want most of the time when I want it. And if I can't, I have the routine down, I have the discipline down, which allows me to save up for that item, buy it, and not put myself in financial stress. Another really important thing to understand and be very cautious of is to not confuse needs for wants. So now we're going in the opposite direction. So let's use a need as an example. You need water to stay hydrated. It is literally, you need it to stay alive. So it's a need. But if you are to now add on some wants into this need spectrum, or you justify it in this way, let's talk about how this can get misconstrued really quickly. Coffee, cordial, soft drinks, flavored waters, sodas, all of these things, technically they'll keep you hydrated and you will be able to survive on them, but they aren't needs. They come at a premium price that you pay a premium for, which essentially takes away from the concept of you defining the need versus want. The need is very specific. Water in this instance of this example is the important thing. I know people who try to justify, I need a drink, I'm out and I need a drink, and they go and spend on something like coffee or soft drink or soda, like I said, as those examples. And the outcome is they're kind of doing themselves a disservice when trying to put themselves in a better financial position and utilizing this concept, using this as a method to build savings and build routine and get disciplined with how they spend their money. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is the difference between the two is it's day and night. Like, there is a difference, and be aware of it. Now, you might think that I'm being a little bit overcautious here and I'm diving in a little bit too deep and I'm being a bit too critical of the difference between these two things. But I want to back it up with some actual evidence. This is where I get to say my funnest line of the video, and it is that these things add up. Like, these small costs do add up. I have metrics to actually prove this as well, where I myself work an office job, and I was working at the time that I was tracking it actively 5 days a week. So I'd go into the office and I would notice very quickly in my earlier days, I would go out for coffee every morning. I might buy a little snack throughout the day. I might go out for lunch, and I would buy and spend money on these items that technically I did not need. I could have made my lunch, brought it from home to work, and I could have just drank water throughout the day if money was tight. I tracked it for about a year. And I still do track it, but I'm not in the office as much. But I'm using an older example just to set the tone, where I realized I was spending anywhere of upwards of $1,000 a year, which in my books is a lot of money on things that I don't need. Things that if money was tight, I would not be comfortable spending that kind of money. And the scary thing is I know people who would spend upwards of $50 a day, and they would justify it as it's too hard to bring their own food in or just drink water. They need coffee to stay awake, whatever it might be. But you really crunch those numbers and you're talking, I know someone who spent, I did the math, I worked it out. It was $2,500 a year on coffee alone. To some people, $2,500 is a lot of money. I'm not trying to sound insensitive here, but $2,500 is a lot of money. You can do a lot with I can pay the majority of my smaller end bills with that kind of money. And all this person needed to do was technically cut out that coffee spending if they wanted to save an extra $2,500 a year. I'm being very specific now because this was a great example and I've been wanting to use it in a video for a long period of time. It's something to definitely take with you. It depends on the job, depends on the situation, depends on the culture, absolutely. But be aware of it, pay attention. Maybe if you are someone who does this and is living paycheck to paycheck or struggling with your cash flow, track that spending and actually see for yourself, do it for a month and actually see what it comes out to be. And I do know that it might sound a little bit stupid to give up drinking coffee or tea, but if you are someone who is in the position where you're wanting to better your financial position, you want to start building routines and habits, this is the place to start. This is where the conversation starts and it leads on from here. The outcome being that you can easily curve your spending on small purchases like food at work, because generally they're the inexpensive things that you can go, okay, not today, I'm not going to buy coffee today, versus the big higher ticket items that you think you need, that you technically want, that you do find yourself justifying to buy. So the easy things, like coffees and that is where you start and you work up from there. Now, I've just used the water example with the coffee, soft drinks, sodas, all of that. What you should then do is apply this logic to all of your needs and see if you do the same thing. Start with what I suggested earlier in the video: housing, clothing, food, that type of stuff. Find the wants in the needs and then see if you can cut the fat. That's the ultimate goal here, is to actually identify the difference between the two going both ways. Do I want this or do I need this? Vice versa, if you're like, I do need this, do you really? Are there things within the need that technically are defined as wants, and can I cut them out of my life, in this instance, to save money? The next thing from this perspective is, once you get into this routine and you've started doing this, great. But if there is something you really do want, or you think you might need, but you really do want it and you're planning to spend your money on it, and it's not essentially going to run out of stock, it's the type of thing that will be there next week, this is when you start applying rules to this logic. It's a want, okay, I'm saving for it, okay, I can buy it right now, I have the money to do it, okay. That doesn't mean you buy it. If it's not going to run out tomorrow, this is where you apply things like the 2-week rule. I have made a video discussing the topic and I've left a link down in the description below to it. So definitely go check that out after this one. If this is something that would flow on from this video in particular, I think it will be helpful because it shows you how to avoid making impulse purchases, essentially, to continue building these good habits with money. So I can't recommend that enough. And while you're down there, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow. The 2-week rule method in particular can be extremely effective because realistically, if there's no urgency to make a purchase, then theoretically you can wait. And waiting gives you time to think and reconsider about that purchase. Ultimately, potentially, myself as an example, I've had many opportunities to buy things that I thought I wanted in that moment, had the money to do it, and waited, and then realized that there was not going to be much value add to my life if I was to spend my money on that. Money is easy to spend, it's hard to save. It takes time to save, and it takes time to be disciplined enough to build those savings. So just keep that in mind as well when applying this method. It's incredibly important because in the long run, you'll save a lot more money by making good decisions and building good habits now. And finally, the last thing to do is to track your spending in general, and this will give you the best holistic view of what you're spending your money on and how it's affecting your cash flow, how it's affecting your habits, and what that means for you as an individual and your finances. Having data to work with is invaluable. I have been tracking basically all of my essential expenses plus any purchase over $100 for about 5 years now. And I cannot recommend doing this enough. It is fantastic from so many different perspectives, but in today's video's perspective, just as the example, you get valuable data that you can see reoccurring purchases of, and you can then realize, oh my God, I'm eating food at work every single day and I never bring it in. That's an exaggerated example just for the sake of this video, but it's one that absolutely would be applicable to a lot of people. So I can't recommend this enough. Control it in a spreadsheet, control it in your notes on your phone. I've made videos again of how to do this and how to categorize them. And I think I have left a link down in the description below. I'll make sure to do that. I'll make a mental note now to leave a link in the description below about how to categorize your expenses and why it's important to do so. So again, if you're someone who's trying to learn this stuff, go to these videos and actually watch them and then actually start putting these practices in place. It's a great conversation to have. And when you start actively trying to do this type of, we'll call it finance management, you can call it whatever you want, you will have massive benefits coming through from now until the day that you stop doing it, which that money can then be repurposed for things that actually are important to you, are actually valuable to you, or provide a better quality of life for you, your friends, and your family, whatever it may be. Overall, what I have covered in today's video is an effective way to assess your spending and give you an opportunity to understand if you need to curb your spending on something in particular. It is an invaluable thing to learn. It is something I have done for a long period of time now, and I am very comfortable with my finances. I cannot recommend it enough. And I was doing this when I was working part-time at a local supermarket, making not that much money considering my age and how much I was working. The point here is to be effective and understand why you're doing these things, put these practices into place and benefit from them in the long run. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it was insightful and I hope you learned something. Go to those video links. I highly recommend continuing down this journey. You won't regret it in the long run. And with that being said, Have a great day. Don't forget to turn on bell notifications, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like down below so I get to keep on growing every single day. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.